This is Dr. Eric Fishman, and I have the pleasure today of speaking with Bob Lorsch, CEO and Chairman of MMR Global and its wholly owned subsidiary, My Medical Records. And we're at HIMSS 2013 in New Orleans. And Bob, thanks for taking the time to sit and chat with us
It's a pleasure. It's nice to run into you after 4 years and see we both look younger.
Yes, almost so, thank you.
Almost so.
And certainly for you. We spoke 4 years ago, and you were telling me about the growth of My Medical Records. You were telling me about the functionality of the product for patients, and I followed it pretty closely, and I understand that there are more and more patients who are using the service. And so let's start with that. How large a footprint do you have of actual users who log in on a routine basis to capture their medical record to make it easier for them to get health care in various offices?
We have two categories of membership. We have members, which are people by virtue of the fact that their employer or their association that they're a member of makes availability of My Medical Records service to them as part of their benefits. And then we have, from that member set, which is many, many hundreds of thousands, actual users that are going to the site on a regular basis, that are maintaining their family's medical records, children, parents, pets, on a comprehensive basis. And that would be, at this particular point, in the many, many tens of thousands of people.
Great.
And the interesting thing, since we met 4 years ago, which is a stat we didn't have, we knew attrition was very low, but attrition rates now are probably less than 1.5%. So once people put something into their account, they're going to keep that account. They're going to maintain that account.
Bob, give us some of the specific benefits that a family would have in using My Medical Records.
Well, My Medical Records is a comprehensive personal health record that enables you to keep not only your family's medical information, the entire family's medical information for up to 10 family members, but also your emergency documents, your emergency preparedness documents, your advanced directives, your driver's license, your passport, your insurance information that you want to have in the event of a tornado, a fire, an earthquake, or a disaster where you're putting your life back together. So it's not only your medical records when you're putting your life back together from a wellness perspective, but it's a life record when you're putting your life back together from any kind of disaster or health information management issue that you're working on.
A little ironic to be speaking about that specifically in New Orleans after Katrina.
Yes, it is. And in fact, after Katrina, we were actually honored by the SBA for having a disaster preparedness program that the Small Business Administration was able to deploy in the aftermath of Katrina, which was one of the first disaster programs the company was actually ever involved in.
Interesting. Now, if I recall correctly, one of the features, the functionalities of which you were most proud was the ability for a physician to fax to a telephone number the medical records, and it gets ending up within the system. Explain how that works.
Well, the biggest problem you have in maintaining a personal health record is standardization and interoperability. And despite the fact that you can walk around the floor here, and a lot of people will argue and debate the fact that we have interoperability, there's no real hard and true evidence of it, other than a nonprofit organization that was formed the first day of this show of a consortium of 5 vendors that are talking about, I think it's Commonwealth, which is the first sign of somebody saying, gee, I think we better do something, and bringing a group of vendors together.
Let's go off on a tangent. Talk to me about Commonwealth. You probably have a significant interest in what they're anticipating doing.
Well, what they're anticipating doing is creating a way that EMR vendors can contribute information to one central network that ultimately would share that information with patients in base form, whether it be electronic form or PDF. They talked about the fact that it was formed as a nonprofit by 5 major vendors, but they also disclosed the fact that for people to participate in the program, there will be some cost. So, and they also disclosed the fact that they don't expect any real activity from it for at least another year. In fact, it's a program that's slated to be introduced and in play at HIMSS 2014. It's an example of an acknowledgement on the part of the industry that something has to be done. However, I'm not sure how it all comes together and everybody does it. Whereas with My Medical Records, because of the way we get information into the account, we can connect to an EMR, we can connect to a sole practitioner who has a fax machine in their office, we can connect to basically any hospital or provider that has information they want to share with a patient, either by giving the patient a hard copy to upload, faxing the medical record to the patient, phoning the patient's medical record and leaving a voice message that says, I have your lab reports and I need to talk to you. Pretty much any communication means that a patient is going to be familiar with and likely to have access to on a home computer or a PDA.
And so let's go back to the functionality for a few moments. And I understand that you have some patents that are involved in how My Medical Records actually accomplishes its task. And maybe you could talk about your patent portfolio for a few moments.
When the company was founded in 2005, I, coming from telecommunications and a firm believer of protecting intellectual property, began to look at the industry, and despite all the talk about standardization, I just didn't believe it. I lived through the breakup of AT&T into a conglomeration of Bell companies, and the purpose of that was to standardize the Bell system, and there is no more regional Bell operating companies. AT&T is still the largest in the world, and all the efforts to standardize anything have gone by the wayside. In fact, if you have an AT&T phone, try to get a SIM card for a Verizon phone because you like the equipment on one over the other. You can't do it. It just doesn't exist. So I said, we can't do it in telecommunications with a $99 handheld device. How are we going to do it when Kaiser's got an investment of $4, $5, or $6 billion in an EMR? How are we going to get them to standardize to the same EMR that UCLA has $500 million in order so that you can create interoperability? And I just didn't buy it.
And so what ideas came from that?
So the idea that came from that was the one standardization that we have in this world that anybody can connect to is the telephone. And so essentially we assigned as an identifier to our patients a lifeline telephone number, a toll-free or a DID telephone number that a patient can use to identify themselves to a physician and give to a physician, where the physician can tell their EMR to electronically send information to that number, or can tell their nurse practitioner to fax information to their number, or they can phone that number, or they can email the patient a document for the patient to upload into their account from their secure email.
And as I recall from approximately 4 years ago, that was fundamental to the functioning of My Medical Record as you're releasing it to the patients and the physicians who are interacting with it.
All the features have been fundamental to My Medical Records. 4 years ago, the patents were filed. Today, 7 of the patents with nearly 400 claims are issued in the United States. We have numerous continuation applications and other patents pending, and we also have patents issued, pending, and applied for in, I think, 12 other countries around the world, and issued in most of those 12 countries.
And what type of actions are you taking with respect to these patents?
In response to the portfolio, there's really 2 opportunities for the hospital. One opportunity is to simply license the patents and use whatever intellectual property they're using to deliver personal health records, forms of electronic medical records to patients and, or in some cases, other users. The other way is to use our products and services, which are embedded in the license. Besides that, I mean, there are certain people that look at the patents and want to discuss the patents and have various different points of view about the patents. And as with any collection of intellectual property, you go through charted waters, and reasonable minds may differ on certain things.
What type of results have you been getting from the various hospitals? I see every now and again a press release that this hospital or that has licensed some of the technology. Give us a high-level view, what's happening in general.
In general, we're getting very, very good response. But it starts out where we send a letter and people will write back and say, what are you talking about?
And how long ago were those letters started?
Well, patents were issued over the course of the last year.
Okay.
So really, most of the activity has taken place in 2012, going into 2013. Once they understand the patents, they realize that maybe there is an issue here, an infringement, but the inclination is to refer us to their vendors. And our response to that is, under meaningful use, the hospitals are actually the ones that are testing to the fact that they're delivering the personal health records.
So it's the attestation that's part of the process here.
Right, so they're confirming, in essence, by that attestation, that they are complying with requirements to deliver personal health records under stage 2 meaningful use, ultimately stage 3 meaningful use, and that leads to a possibility of the infringement. And when we explain it to them and we share with them the cost of us delivering a personal health record versus a portal from an EMR provider, we get good responses. We've signed up a number of organizations with licenses. We've signed up a number of organizations who realize it's more cost effective to deliver our personal health record than deliver a more restrictive portal. And also our personal health record has many more features and benefits to it. So it actually works for a hospital not only as a PHR, but as a marketing tool for them to communicate and reach out to the community.
Interesting. And I'm hoping we can repeat this in Orlando in 2014 at the next HIMSS. What do you expect we'll be speaking about at that time? What do you expect will be happening to MMR Global My Medical Records in the ensuing 12 months?
The portfolio that we have in the United States has been valued at a range of $600 million to $1.1 billion in terms of life value based on the personal health record market as it exists today, which is the cusp, the beginning. We have no valuations on patents in the 12 other countries. And some of these countries that we have issued patents, Mexico, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, I mean, these are big countries that have put a lot of money behind health information technology. So I guess the question is, we will evolve into a very large provider of patient information through our license portals, or we will evolve into a company that basically works with very large players in the EMR business and leverages our technology to make their personal health record services better, which is kind of like the win-win that we've looked for from the beginning. The purpose of these patents is not to go out and collect license fees and royalties, although that's the way the licensing business works. It was to build a barrier to entry so that we can compete in the market against these very, very large, well-financed companies. And this is the one competitive advantage that we think we have in terms of positioning ourselves in the market as an important player, as someone that has to be looked at.
I understand. Bob, it's certainly an interesting time to be in this industry.
It's definitely very, very interesting. And it's an interesting time to be at My Medical Records and MMR Global.
Absolutely. Bob, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
This is Dr. Eric Fishman with EHR-TV. We've had the pleasure of speaking with Bob Lorsch, Chairman and CEO of MMR Global and My Medical Records. Thank you.